Whew. So this video is going to be about ESTJs and ISTJs and comparing them based on their tertiary and repressed functions. So here's a quote. Any religion that endorses violence is incapable of delivering spiritual enlightenment. How obvious does that have to be? And it has no right even to call itself a religion. Without the shield of religion to hide behind, Islam would be banned in the civilized world as a political ideology of hate. And we have no obligations to make allowances for it any more than we do for Nazism. It's a bigger threat to our freedom than Nazism ever was. So that is Pat Condell talking about Islam, obviously. And so you might be tempted to type Pat Condell as a feeling type if the title of this video weren't ESTJ versus ISTJ, because he has such strong personal convictions that he's espousing in that quote. And I see that on forums and stuff, people typing people who have feelings as feeling types, which kind of makes sense. But there's a quote from von Franz that would indicate that this kind of black and white, us v them morality is more indicative of repressed introverted feeling, so making Pat Condell an extroverted thinking type. So she says, unconscious and undeveloped feeling is barbaric and absolute, and therefore sometimes hidden destructive fanaticism bursts out. These people are incapable of seeing that from a feeling standard, other people might have another value, for they do not question the inner values they defend. Where they definitely feel that something is right, they are incapable of showing their feeling standpoint, but they never doubt their own inner values. So that is the headstrong nature that makes people love ESTJs when they agree with them and hate ESTJs when they disagree with them. ESTJs feel they're right, and when they feel they're right, they will tell you that. So no surprise that they are very, divisive type. And even if they're not divisive, they have, even if they don't shout, they typically have a difficult time sympathizing with someone who has a different value. And so you can see examples of this with Paul of Tarsus, very tough-minded individual who proselytized Christianity unto his death. Pat Condell, obviously, talking about Islam, and Emma Watson and her advocacy of feminism. So just a sprinkle, a potpourri of different values so that there's something for everyone there. So one of the interesting things about that is that the ESTJ often presents their values as if they were objective, something that stands outside of themselves instead of something that is born from within. So they can kind of weirdly look like FETI types in that way. And I'll read you a quote from Roger Ebert, ESTJ, who is expressing it there. He says, my judgment doesn't involve taste. It involves a deep-seated conviction that something is right, has always been right, and always will be. So, on the other hand, we have the ISTJs who do not share introverted feeling in the repressed position. Instead, they have a more developed appreciation for diversity of values. And this leads to them being more diplomatic, like Eisenhower. The ISTJ, compare him to Bernard Montgomery, the ESTJ. And like I said, they have a better appreciation for diversity of values, and because of that, they don't state their values as if they were objective like the ESTJ can do. So, demonstrative quote, George Washington, ISTJ, says, labor to keep alive in your breast that little spark of celestial fire called conscience. So, more focus on the person deciding what's right for him instead of aligning himself with what's right, as the ESTJ will do. So, more on the ISTJ's introverted feeling in the tertiary position. Introverted feeling described by Jung as a sympathetic parallelism, where because you cannot express introverted feeling directly, you have to find some other way to express it and have like a correlation like that. And so the ISTJs, maybe not as given to art as the introverted feeling dominant types, but they do provide an example of introverted feeling sympathetic parallelism in their setting examples for other people, is the pattern that I found on celebrity types. So 2 quotes to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So Jamie Heineman, ISTJ, on our show we are promoting by example ethical behavior. So demonstrating his values through in an indirect way that people can glean the values themselves, like how introverted feeling dominant types will demonstrate their values in an indirect way through art, whatever, and then other people can glean the values and get that sympathetic parallelism going. And then Arthur Wellington, whatever enthusiasm an army feels is the result of the example set by the head of the army. So ISTJs differ from the ESTJs in their feeling in that it's not as direct. The ESTJ says these are the values, these are why they're right. The ISTJ goes about it indirectly, in a much more developed way of introverted feeling. And then ISTJs repress extroverted intuition, and extroverted intuition is, according to Vanderhoop, a function that makes self-expression very easy. So the ISTJs have trouble with self-expression, which is weird because they also have introverted feeling. So they are one of the types that has the most difficulty expressing its values, maybe second to the ISFP. And they have like the INFP, this introverted sensing and introverted feeling, very experiential inner world, but they lack the extroverted intuition to express it easily, and they often turn to actions. They point to actions are stronger than words is one of their mottos, and they don't want to oversell what they can do. And so this leads to people seeing them as having a lot of integrity, and wanting to show their values through their actions rather than words. So I've got 2 quotes here that are demonstrative of that. My affections, though narrow, are strong and constant. That's Evelyn Waugh, showing again the repressed extroverted intuition, not cycling through a lot of different ideas, but sticking to a few and feeling them strongly. And then Carly Fiorina, in business, I demonstrated my value through actions rather than words. So ESTJs, on the other hand, and I'm realizing now that I'm kind of presenting ESTJs as like social critics rather than like bosses, as they're often presented, which is a strange pattern when we look at the extroverted intuition and introverted feeling of these 2 types. But anyways, ESTJs do not repress extroverted intuition, so they're kind of like the ENFP, a weird kind of ENFP. So the ENFP is kind of like, as Michael Pierce describes them, this like globe-trotting advocate. And the ESTJs are kind of the same way, but like meaner. They use their powers of self-expression, NE, to spur the public into action, TE, so kind of like the ENFP there. Both want to use their power of self-expression to spur the public into action, whereas the ENTP wants to use their power of self-expression just so that the public understands something, and they usually think that understanding is enough. It's an observation I got from that Celebrity Types article. Another look at ESTJ. Yeah, but so they're like the ENFPs in that they want to spur the public into action, and they're more direct about it than the ISTJ, who has trouble with self-expression. So you could take Ben Shapiro, for example, who's an ESTJ, and he says in his own words that he's like the guy who goes to public high schools with poor kids and says, the reason your parents are poor is because they are bad with money and made bad decisions. Don't make those decisions and you'll do better. So he's a bit like the ENFP, but a little harsher, trying to really inspire those kids. So yeah, that's basically all I have on ESTJ and ISTJ. This will probably be my last video. Very sad. But yeah, that's all I got.